This program contains coarse language.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've made many mistakes in my life, but investing in China is not one of them.
Many of the VIPs, for one trip, they would spend millions, sometimes tens of millions, or up to hundreds of millions.
Gambling itself and also the marketing of gambling is illegal as we understand it in mainland China. So what we understand is that there was a risk of Chinese law enforcement that might flow from Crown's attempts to lure Chinese VIPs to its casinos in Australia.
Well, obviously, if you have been going to Crown and then you are phoned up by the local police and questioned on your movements, you'll be close to borderline suicidal if you were to make another trip to Australia in a short period of time. It's like putting a big X across your forehead.
Welcome to Four Corners. When James Packer took his big punt on the casino business, his high-rolling father Kerry was sceptical. But James defied the critics and made the Crown casino empire a shining success. That is, until October last year, when 15 Crown staff in China were rounded up by Chinese police in dramatic late-night raids. 14 of those staff, including 3 Australians, are still under arrest. Crown had developed a business model based on luring rich Chinese, known as VIP high rollers, to its casinos. But it was a risky business in a country where gambling and promoting gambling are illegal. Since the arrests of its staff, Crown has been in turmoil. Its chairman and chief executive have resigned, and its principal shareholder, James Packer, has seen revenue from Chinese high rollers plunge, raising questions about the future of Crown's new VIP casino at Barangaroo in Sydney. Marion Wilkinson investigates.
In the casino business, luck is everything. Until recently, James Packer looked like a lucky man, in business and in love.
Mr. James Packer and Mariah Carey! Leonardo DiCaprio! Mr. Brett Ratner! Mr. De Niro and Martin Scorsese! Mr. Lawrence Ho! And Mrs. Sharon Ho!
With the help of his Hollywood friends and his influential Hong Kong business partner Lawrence Ho, Packer unveiled his third casino venture in the Chinese territory of Macau just 18 months ago. At the star-studded casino launch, Packer sang the praises of the Chinese government.
We believe in the long term, not the short term. We believe in the Chinese government, and if someone says to me, you know, what's the definition of good government? I'd say a government that raises the living standards of its population. And on that basis, the Chinese government has done an amazing job, perhaps a better job than any other government in the world.
Like James Packer, the new $4 billion Macau casino looked like a winner.
And it's 3, and it's 2, and 1. Please press down the circles. Congratulations, ladies and gentlemen, the official start of Studio City Macau.
We could be here.
But looks are deceptive. When Studio City opened, investors in Macau knew casino profits were plunging.
It turned and it really went down. So yes, we were in the midst of many, many months of downturn at that stage, and Macau came down about a third, roughly, from its peak. So yeah, it was panic stations.
The downturn in Macau's profits was triggered by an unprecedented crackdown on money laundering and corruption launched by the Chinese president.
And everybody thought it would just be for 6 months or something like that, but it hasn't been. I mean, it's still ongoing today, and all credit to the President of China for doing it, to be frank. Yes, it hurt the Macau gaming industry, but it is transforming China as a country. So, if there's some collateral damage, I don't think President Xi Jinping is too concerned about it.
When it reclaimed Macau, China let it flourish as its very own Las Vegas, the only place in China where it's legal to put on a bet in a casino. As the high rollers poured in from the mainland, Macau became the richest, glitziest gambling den in the world. It also became a massive money laundry.
我们党作为执政党，面临的最大危险就是腐败，反腐败斗争压倒性态势正在形成。
When President Xi Jinping launched his crackdown on corruption and illegal money flows from China, few in the casino business realised the far-reaching consequences for them.
The corruption crackdown is unparalleled. I've been in Asia 40 years. I've never seen anything on the scale. It's a sort of purge on a very large scale.
For a decade, James Packer's Crown Group had bet billions of dollars on its strategy of luring wealthy Chinese gamblers to its casinos in Asia and Australia.
Sides, please welcome James Packer.
As Crown's principal shareholder, Packer confidently backed the strategy at every opportunity.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've made many mistakes in my life, but investing in China is not one of them.
That strategy has been blown apart after police raided Crown's operations across China late last year. One of Australia's top public companies is now collateral damage in China's corruption crackdown.
This was a shot across the bows by the Chinese government of the individual casino concerned, Crown, but it was a general warning to everybody else who was thinking about sending people to China to recruit Chinese high rollers to gamble in the casinos. If you're caught, we'll make an example of you.
On the night of October 13, Chinese police launched a series of coordinated raids on the homes of Crown staff. It was a stunning police action against a foreign company in China. The raids were carefully planned and terrifying.
They all occurred on the same night across several major Chinese cities, Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and the scenes that were described to me by family members that were present were quite remarkable. They described teams of 6 or 7 plainclothes police officers knocking on the door after midnight, bursting through after the door was opened, and basically they said it felt like they were suspects of a murder investigation or a drug bust. You know, that was just how sudden and forceful the raids were. Pretty shortly after that, they were starting to basically confiscate or seize all these communications equipment, including laptops, computers, iPads, hard disk drives.
The raids rolled out in 4 Chinese cities. 15 Crown staff and a number of associates were taken into custody. They're understood to include Crown's Vice President in China, Alfred Gomez, a Malaysian citizen. 2 dual Australian-Chinese nationals, Jerry Xuan and Jenny Pan. And Chinese staff, Jenny Jiang and David Dai Bin. In a coup for Chinese police, they caught one of Crown's top Australian executives, Jason O'Connor, en route to Shanghai Airport.
He heads up the VIP program, so his main job is to, attract these high-value, high rollers to Crown's casinos to gamble.
Four Corners understands O'Connor was in Shanghai to meet face-to-face with Chinese VIP customers. He was tipped off about the raids by local staff and made a dash for the airport.
He made quite a dramatic escape on his company chauffeured car, going to the airport to Shanghai, but he was never able to board the plane.
Four Corners has been told within an hour of the first raids, Crown's offices in Asia and Australia triggered emergency protocols and began deleting data about Chinese customers. But Crown could do nothing to stop Chinese police taking its staff, including O'Connor, to a Shanghai detention centre for questioning.
They always do this in the middle of the night because it maximises the sort of crushing feeling that this prisoner now has. You know, this sense of humiliation, defeat, shock is maximised in this way so that when they start getting interrogated again the following day, they're in a state of breakdown already.
Peter Humphrey knows what the Crown staff almost certainly endured. Humphrey and his wife were thrown into a Shanghai detention centre 3 years ago when they were swept up in a Chinese investigation into a British company.
It was absolutely traumatic experience, and I'm sad to say that these Australians and Chinese who were working for Crown Casinos will have most certainly gone through that kind of experience. Many of them will have been thrown into a cell like that in the middle of the night, just like I was.
Interrogation is commonly used on detainees, says Humphrey.
They have an interrogation wing of this detention centre, so they'll be led out of their cell, put in handcuffs. They're forced to squat when they exit the cell. They have to squat in front of the officers. They'll be led down a corridor and across a rusty sort of iron bridge which connects two wings of the building into the interrogation block. And in that block, there are interrogation cells, and the typical cell has a small rostrum at one side under a window, and then it has a metal cage in the middle. This cage is made of steel, you know, so it's a silvery steel cage. Inside the cage is an iron chair with a bar that locks across your lap. So what will happen to these prisoners is that they will be taken into that cage, they'll be put in that cage, they'll be locked in that chair, they'll also have the handcuffs on, they'll be sitting like that, and then there'll be 2 or 3 policemen, PSB men, up on that rostrum. One of them will be typing on a laptop. Another one may be receiving guidance and instructions through an earpiece from someone who you never see. So they'll be questioned in that style, locked in the cage, guys up on the rostrum. No lawyer present.
The aim, he says, will be to get the Crown staff to confess to a crime.
I think that the whole ecosystem of the detention centre environment is set up in such a way to put so much duress on you in many ways, physical, psychological, emotional. That is all intended to make you crumple and confess, because you're led to think that the only way out of here is by confessing.
In Canberra, the detention of the Crown staff in China sparked an immediate crisis for Foreign Minister Julie Bishop.
Can you tell us something about the circumstances in which they're being held?
Our consular officials have visited the Shanghai detention centre. It is adequate, but it is a detention centre, somewhat like a prison, so the conditions are adequate. But it was not comfortable at all, but they are being looked after and they are in good health.
Minister, have you spoken directly to James Packer about this, and what's been the nature of that discussion?
I've been in contact with Mr Packer.
Do you have any detail of what the allegations are against these
We don't
people?
have those details. There have been reports that it's related to gambling in the casinos, evidently, but beyond that, we don't have any specific details.
In Beijing, China's foreign ministry confirmed the bad news for Crown.
应该不属于外交的问题。如果它是跟前几天大家所关心的有澳大利亚籍公民因涉嫌赌博而被中国 有关警方所拘留的事情呢，我建议你向中国的上海警方去了解具体的情况。具体呢，他们从事的是什么的活动？那么，到底目前是个什么样的状况？但是赌博在中国应该是非法的。
Gambling is illegal in mainland China. It's also illegal to promote gambling or arrange for more than 10 people to travel to a foreign casino to gamble. But in the chase to woo rich Chinese gamblers or VIPs, many foreign casinos like Crown have been sidestepping this law. They say their staff in China are not promoting gambling, they're promoting tourism in their luxury resorts in Australia, the US and Macau.
The usual facade is that they go in to market the resorts. They're there to promote the resort, the end destination. However, once that individual person is within China, they're ensconced in a room, private room with a target client. Have no doubt that the topic is, when would you like to come to our casino? How much would you like to play? And do we need to give you credit in order to encourage you to come and play?
Whether Crown broke the law in its efforts to lure rich mainland gamblers to its casinos will be decided by the Chinese authorities. But lawyers for some of Crown's minority shareholders seeking to launch a class action claim the company knew its marketing in China was highly risky and failed to disclose this to the market.
What we understand is that Crown was seeking to engage in marketing of its gambling operations in mainland China. Gambling itself and also the marketing of gambling is illegal as we understand it in mainland China. So what we understand is that there was a risk of Chinese law enforcement that might flow from Crown's attempts to lure Chinese VIPs to its casinos in Australia.
To understand what went wrong for Packer's China strategy, you first need to understand why it looked like a great idea. Before Studio City, Packer's joint venture with Lawrence Ho, Melco Crown Entertainment, launched two very profitable casinos in Macau, City of Dreams and Altira. They were managed by Ho's company. They were pitched to wealthy Chinese men on the mainland.
Pleasant evening, sir. What a question.
By 2012, Macau was booming and Melco Crown's profits were soaring. Packer was convinced Crown was on a winning streak and bet the future of the company on Chinese VIP gamblers.
Crown's 33.6% interest in Melco Crown Entertainment has been a major financial success for us, and the investment has now grown in size to be one of the largest Australian joint venture partnerships operating inside China. And Melco Crown, driven by a surging Chinese tourist market, is continuing to expand in Macau and now throughout Asia, with major investments in new hotels and attractions.
It was interesting, we had a decade of 20% on average year-on-year growth. So when that happens, as a businessman, you tend to feel like God. So you just keep, it was just happy days. Everything was booming.
While Macau's casinos encourage mass-market tourists from China, the key to their success is their VIP rooms. These are private rooms in the casinos. Here, wealthy Chinese gamblers can discreetly bet a fortune in Hong Kong dollars on a hand of baccarat.
Well, if you go to any Macau VIP room, typical minimum bet starts from 3,000 or 5,000, but that's just the minimum bet. And I know many of the VIPs, for one trip, they would spend millions, sometimes tens of millions, or up to hundreds of millions in the VIP, in playing baccarat in the VIP rooms.
In one trip?
In one trip, yeah.
The VIP high rollers are brought to the casinos by agents who are called junket operators. Tony Tong is a lobbyist for the Macau junket operators, and they are crucial to the success of a big casino.
They need to have a relationship with the junket agent, who is responsible for serving, taking care of the VIP customer, and arranging the trip, making all the logistic arrangements, visa applications, hotel reservations, sometimes private jets and entertainment activities.
What sort of entertainment are we talking about?
Anything that the VIP wants.
What the Chinese VIP gambler usually wants from the junket operator is a big line of credit, especially if they don't have assets outside the mainland. That's because China has strict currency controls to stop people taking more than $50,000 a year out of the country without government approval.
Most of the VIPs, when they go to Macau, they don't want to bring that much money. So the majority of the VIP play is fueled by credits.
The junket operators, Tong explains, are also responsible for collecting gambling debts if a Chinese VIP won't pay up. It's a fraud business because it's illegal to enforce gambling debts in mainland China.
They have to go through other means, which means basically making life difficult for the debtor, basically following the debtor and going to his company. Basically starts with more telephone calls and reminder calls. If you still don't get paid, then you have to show up at the doorstep at his home or his business, and then hopefully you'll get some more progress. So normally every time when you send people to show up, normally they have something to collect.
And have there been cases where the junket operators have gone further than that? Has there been violence?
Yeah, there are often cases in Macau, Hong Kong, even in mainland China that involves violence. Sometimes the collectors, in order to recover the debt, they have to go through pretty extreme means.
Like what?
I think normally, from what I heard, nobody wants to, really hurt the debtor. Normally, from what I heard, if you really do something bad, it could harm your business. It could harm your chance to collect. I think it is the threat of violence that is more important than the violence itself.
David Green is a former advisor to the Macau government on casino regulation. He admits some junket operators have very dubious connections.
Very occasionally there'll be reports of violence against people who left Macau owing gambling debts, and that violence occurring on the mainland.
What sort of violence?
Assault through murder, kidnapping. Ransom is always a means of getting paid. So, yes, very unpleasant tactics.
Macau has a long history of organised crime. Hong Kong triad gangs held sway here in the 1990s before China reclaimed the territory from the Portuguese. Police intelligence reports in the US and Hong Kong say triad members still have links to some of Macau's big junket operators.
Well, I'm not going to name any given ones for obvious legal reasons, but it is my firm belief that many of the junket operations have firm triad connections. Why? Because, who's going to enforce a debt on the mainland? It's illegal to enforce debts, so there's no legal manner to reach into the mainland China and enforce a debt. So that's what they do. They can raise capital and move money. So triads remain associated with junkets. I think they wanted to make a statement.
Steve Vickers is a corporate risk advisor who previously ran Hong Kong's police criminal intelligence unit. He believes the casino owners know about the triad links to some junkets.
I think they're aware. I don't think they've ever been naive, and I do think they're making an effort to improve the situation. But the history of Macau is murky, and the involvement of triads has gone on for a very long time.
Crown's joint venture in Macau worked with several big junket operators accused of links to triads in police intelligence reports. One was the Neptune junket, which was publicly exposed for its triad connections 3 years ago. The Hong Kong courts have heard some extraordinary cases linking junket operators with money laundering and triads. But perhaps the most sensational was the case of the Hong Kong hairdresser who ended up owner of the English football club Birmingham City. He'd been a huge gambler in the VIP rooms at a Macau casino. Hong Kong barrister Kevin Egan was part of that case and saw the evidence linking the Neptune Group with an alleged top triad member.
This gentleman by the name of Cheung Chi Tai was one of the promoters of the Neptune junket. He ran it along with 2 others. And he is alleged to have very serious triad connections, but he's never been charged with or convicted of triad offences. But if you asked anyone from the Organised Crime and Triad Bureau at the Hong Kong Police Force what his status was, they would say senior office bearer in a triad society.
And he was involved in the junket operation?
His name was on a great many cheques.
Neptune claims Cheung is no longer involved with the group. But Neptune's agents for years had junket agreements to bring Chinese VIPs to Australian casinos, including Crown Melbourne and Perth, and its rival Star Casino in Sydney. Does it surprise you?
It doesn't, because I think the bottom line is, if you're not working through the junket operators, then your casino will go out of business.
The big casinos like Crown raked in the profits by using junket operators. But the big loser was China. Casinos became one of the conduits for huge amounts of capital to exit China in underground money flows. Corrupt Chinese officials and businessmen were using the VIP rooms not only to gamble ill-gotten gains, but move money offshore.
Well, up to about 4 years ago, at its height, the Macau government recorded gaming revenues of 45 billion United States dollars. The harsh reality was, because of the junket activity, the illicit side betting that was going on, you could probably multiply that by 6. So that's the scale of, just a little south of 250 billion US dollars a year. So as a matter of economic national security, they need to crack down on those capital outflows. That's why it's a really serious issue.
Crown's Australian strategy became dominated by luring wealthy Chinese VIPs to its casinos in Melbourne and Perth, and Packer drove it from the top.
I spent a lot of time in casinos as a kid with my dad, and I ended up thinking, fuck, this must be a good business.
In 2012, Packer proposed an ambitious new casino in Sydney built just for VIP high rollers, mainly from China. It won enthusiastic backing from the New South Wales Premier.
He's put a proposal forward that is unique, that would see a 6-star hotel, something the city doesn't have, located at Barangaroo, and yes, part of that proposal would be for this Asian high rollers room. This will be a VIP-only gaming facility. There will not be poker machines.
The Barangaroo casino licence was granted with no public inquiry. The former head of the state casino regulator believes that was a mistake.
There was no public tender process and there was no inquiry at any stage, a public inquiry, as to the public benefit involved in this.
Do you think there should have been?
I think there should have been, yes. I think that casinos are big money spinners, and operating a casino in most circumstances is like a licence to print money. For that reason, we need to know, firstly, that there is public interest or public benefit in having an additional casino in the first place. The parliamentary scrutiny was fast. It was, to my mind, relatively superficial. I don't think there was an appetite for thorough scrutiny. I think there was a wish simply to get the job done in terms of having some basic level of examination and doing the deal.
To realise Crown's ambitions, Packer and his CEO, Rowan Craigie, needed even more Chinese VIP gamblers to come to Australia. Crown appointed a brash Taiwanese American to re-energise its marketing push into China. He came with a reference from the head of the US casino giant, Caesars.
Michael Chen is a very aggressive person, very ambitious. He has a very august background. He came from Harvard. So Mark is a very, very smart and intelligent person.
Michael Chen supercharged the China operation. He even appeared with James Packer's mother Roz during the Sydney Symphony Orchestra's China Tour, an event sponsored by Crown and supported by the Australian Embassy. More controversially, he increased Crown staff on the ground in China.
He obviously had a very ambitious and very high target to meet to justify, I suppose, his appointment. And he in turn went on a very expensive program to recruit just about anybody and everybody he can in terms of on-the-ground marketing experience. He went through Macau, Hong Kong, China, even down to Cambodia, Malaysia, Singapore, and recruited a very, very big team of people.
As part of its revamped efforts, Crown stepped up its business with junket operators from the mainland. One of the most important was a Chinese-Australian national, Tom Zhou, from Hubei province.
His Chinese name, Zhou Zhoming, is certainly a name that is well known in industry circles. You know, you whisper his name and they'll tell you that he was one of the largest, if not the largest, junket provider of, who recommended mainland Chinese gamblers to Crown.
Zhou's success can be measured by his $15 million Toorak mansion and a spread of businesses and properties across Melbourne. His Hubei business partner, Tian Di, became another big junket operator for Crown.
He was spending a lot of time in the VIP suites on the 29th floor at Crown. He'd be given the use of a VIP hotel suite for when he had, guests in town.
Tian Di also spent up on Melbourne property, buying this Victorian stables and renaming it the Nine Dragons. He entertained Chinese VIP high rollers here when they came to Crown in Melbourne.
Crown would offer their private helicopter and fly people to and from the Nine Dragons Racing Club, landing right on the open grass field at Nine Dragons and creating quite a big scene. And that was exactly what the, VIP clients from China just loved. They loved being treated as kings and queens.
By 2015, Crown's aggressive drive for Chinese high rollers was on a collision course with President Xi's crackdown. After targeting Macau's casinos, some analysts believe Chinese authorities wanted to make an example of a foreign casino owner.
It would appear that the Chinese government suspected that people were continuing to wander around the mainland raising funds for offshore gaming, and that the crackdown was on, and the capital outflow situation was also on. And I think killing a chicken in front of the monkey is probably what's actually occurred.
In China's high-profile corruption trials, the names of VIP gamblers from Crown casinos began to surface. They included Lu Han, a high roller at Crown's Perth casino who invested heavily in the Australian mining industry. He was sentenced to death for murder, gun running and being head of a mafia gang. In another case, Chen Haiju, a top Chinese airline executive jailed for life for corruption, was revealed as a big gambler at Crown in Melbourne.
I believe he mentioned Crown, he mentioned Australia, Las Vegas and London. He was on trial and he told about his story, how he got addicted with gambling, how he was invited to go to casinos, how he was offered free chips, how he won the money. And so I think it received a lot of media attention and probably received attention from the government investigators.
The Deputy Bureau Chief at China's Ministry of Public Security issued a direct warning to foreign casinos marketing on the mainland.
Neighbouring countries have casinos and they have set up offices in China to attract and drum up interest from Chinese citizens to go abroad and gamble. This will also be an area that we will crack down on.
Just months later, the Chinese police dramatically swooped on scores of Korean casino workers who were targeting VIP gamblers in China. It made headline news.
한국 카지노 업체 직원들이 무더기로 중국 공안에 체포됐습니다. 국내 카지노 업체들이 좀 무리하게 고객 영업에 나섰다가 단속에 걸린 것으로 보입니다.
Industry players say this should have been a warning to Crown about its activities on the mainland.
South Koreans were also promoting in an aggressive fashion, and there were some arrests there which became a bit of an incident, and the word was put out, an example was made, don't do this.
Crown sources told Four Corners a risk assessment was done for Crown's top management after the Korean arrests. Remarkably, it concluded the arrest did not signal a serious threat to Crown staff in China.
There was a certain arrogance and complacency in that, well, these are the Asians, they were too aggressive, they were channeling funds, etc., etc., etc. And, they wouldn't touch us because we are, frankly speaking, we are white guys.
Four Corners has been told that Jason O'Connor, Crown's senior VIP executive, became increasingly anxious about travelling to China, but felt under pressure to keep the business growing.
He was there because he was told to go there. He was just doing his job. He was just doing his job. He wasn't a rogue employee. He wasn't doing anything he wasn't told to do. He was doing what his job required him to do.
14 Crown staff are now under formal arrest in China, waiting to see if they will be charged. One was released on bail. Junket operator Tian Di is also understood to have been detained but has since been released. Crown's China marketing guru, Michael Chen, was at home in Hong Kong on the night of the raids. He's free, but has been put on permanent leave by Crown. Crown's VIP marketing head, Jason O'Connor, a father of two, is among those under arrest and still in detention.
I understand that his family must be worried like hell. He won't know a lot about the legal process that is underway, if we can call it a legal process. He won't know because they just don't tell you. So you're left in a great state of anxiety while you're in that cell.
Peter Humphrey was a corporate risk advisor in China, as well as being a victim of the Chinese legal system. He is deeply pessimistic about Jason O'Connor's chances of a quick release.
When people are arrested in China, 99.9% of these cases, nobody gets out. Nobody gets out. They will be charged, they will be convicted.
James Packer maintained a close friendship with Foreign Minister Julie Bishop as Crown pursued its China strategy. But since the arrests, Bishop has said little publicly about the Australian detainees, and there appears to be slim room for diplomatic intervention. The best hope for Crown and its staff is that Chinese authorities decide the case is weak and release them without charge.
That would clean the slate, in effect. So that's the best possible outcome. I think it's probably the least likely outcome. I think the fact that these people have been in detention now since October last year would suggest to me that something's coming down the pipeline.
A trial and conviction of its staff in China would be a devastating blow for Crown. It should also trigger a review of Crown's casino licences in Australia, according to the former head of the New South Wales Liquor and Gaming Authority.
We would have to take into account the deficiencies in the Chinese legal system and the way in which they can collect evidence and conduct the trial process. But if there are charges in China and if those charges result in convictions, in my view, that would place an authority like a regulatory body in Australia on notice and require further inquiries to be made.
Crown's high-powered board has been in disarray since the arrests. Longtime CEO Rowan Craigie resigned last month when Crown announced its VIP turnover had crashed by almost 45%. Four Corners has confirmed reports that some of Crown's top VIP clients in China have been brought in for questioning by police.
Well, obviously, if you have been going to Crown and you are phoned up by the local police and questioned on your movements and your past history of travel to Australia, you'll be close to borderline suicidal if you were to make another trip to Australia in a short period of time. It's like putting a big X across your forehead. When the arrest first happened, we projected that Crown's VIP or international business would be impacted by at least 50%. I believe that projection is probably an understatement, if anything.
The fall in VIP revenues is bad news for Packer's cherished Barangaroo Casino in Sydney. Packer has announced he's returning to the Crown board after a year's absence, but he faces a mandatory probity inquiry by New South Wales regulators before that happens. He's backed his close confidant, John Alexander, as Crown's new executive chairman to steer the company through the continuing crisis.
The Crown Board have some serious responsibilities because the onus is very much on an employer to conduct its business as far as possible in accordance with the law. Now, if there was a law in China that they were violating, then Crown is responsible. The employer is also responsible for drilling down into their employees' knowledge of laws, regulations, making sure that employees know what they need to do to be compliant, and policing that compliance, making sure they are behaving in a compliant way. Did they fail to do that? Well, they evidently did, They evidently did, because it appears that their employees in some way or another either offended someone or broke a law. And so that is very much the responsibility of Crown.
For now, Crown is folding on its big China bet, selling down its once prized assets in Macau and rethinking its reliance on Chinese high rollers. For James Packer, luck, it seems, is not running his way.